Last week, we shared part of our trip into County Donegal, the quiet roads, the rugged cliffs, and the warm welcome that makes this corner of Ireland feel like a secret you hope never gets out. But we weren't able to see and do everything that we wanted to in Donegal in a single trip, partly because we were there for a conference, but every conversation with locals, every signpost pointing towards somewhere we didn't have time to explore, reminded us that Donegal is a story told in chapters. This week, we're picking up the thread to share the places we didn't reach, the wild headlands, the hidden castles, windswept golf courses, and late-night music sessions that are already calling us back. Donegal showed us that sometimes the most powerful memories are the ones still waiting. We're Scott and Melissa, the Sunshine Travelers.
We're all about exploring the world and sharing the journey with you, whether you're a seasoned traveler, dreaming of your next adventure, or just here for the stories.
No matter where you are on your travel journey, we've got firsthand experiences, tips, and plenty of inspiration from some of the most amazing places on Earth.
So buckle up and get ready to travel with us. So, Scott, one thing that I loved is that Donegal isn't going to try to pretend that the weather is always going to be perfect.
Yeah, it definitely was not perfect while we were there, but the people there embrace the wind and the rain. Whether you're talking about hiking, golfing, or listening to music in a pub, the weather's just part of the experience, and it's not something that they try to hide. Matter of fact, the county of Donegal, the person who is over their tourism, she said they even did a marketing campaign around those things, the wind and the rain and, sometimes a little bit of sun.
And honestly, I mean, we didn't mind it. It's probably the first time in a long time when we've had a trip like this, where the weather is like it was supposed to be in a place like this. And so honestly, knowing that was kind of our little fall break, and we were going to come back to hot weather, and we had the right clothing, or we got the right clothing while we were there. It didn't bother us. It was nice. And so I think that spirit just shows up in all the places that we didn't quite reach, but that we can already picture in our heads to visit next time.
Yeah, places like Malin Head, Glenveagh Castle, and just so many others. Why don't we take our listeners on that journey of next time?
Yeah, and we will even a few things that we did that took us close, and then why we would want to revisit some of these places, and then a few of the places that we did hit.
Let's start out with Malin Head. It's one of the places that was on the list of things that we wanted to try to do while in Ireland, and it just didn't happen because we felt like we didn't have enough time. And so Malin Head is the most northerly point of mainland Ireland, where the Atlantic, just beats up against the jagged cliffs, and locals describe the skies that can change by the minute and views that stretch for forever. But just as our days filled while we were making this journey, it just seemed like it was so out of the way to go to Malin Head for us and all of the things that we were trying to accomplish.
Yeah. So the day that we were driving, we really only had half of a day. And so based on just how we had spent our days when we made those other stops, I think really if it says, spend an hour here, you can kind of guarantee that we're going to spend 2. Or if it says 2, you need 2 hours, we're going to need 4, right? I think we just like to take it at a slower pace and soak things in. And then of course we're taking pictures and videos and things like that along the way. And I just hate to be rushed. And so when we looked at this, it was literally going to be, we could drive there and then we probably have to just see it and then turn around and drive. And so it's just not a great way, I don't think, to, experience that. And then it was just going to be a long time in the car, just completely driving. Whereas what we ended up doing was we ended up stopping at that Musen Den temple And we got to spend a long time walking while the sun was out that morning. We talk about that kind of in the Northern Ireland episode. So unfortunately, that didn't leave us any time. So this would be an area that I would think that you would want to concentrate on and at least have one night, if not more, to spend, or you spend the night in this area.
And a lot of people compare Malin Head to like the Cliffs of Moher. And so if you're thinking about a trip and you're familiar with the Cliffs of Moher, but you want to go find that off the beaten path, I would say that Sleeve League that we talked about in the last episode, as well as Malin Head, would be two places there that are off the beaten path where a lot of tourists aren't going to go to. And it would be something unique and different when planning your trip.
And Scott, I think we also need to add that. So we spent about 2.5, 3 days like in Northern Ireland. And of course you could spend a lot more, but I really feel like we hit a lot of the highlights. And so then you could move over into this area with, say, a week. It was just that we had that conference, right, that took up the rest of our week. So you could very easily combine this and a lot of these things that we're going to talk about today with that Northern Ireland itinerary.
Well, one thing that you're going to want to explore while you're in this area, besides just visiting Malin Head, is the Wild Alpaca Way. Here you can take a 1-hour walk with an adorable alpaca and capture some amazing photos with your little furry guide. And it's set against this beautiful landscape. So go to wildalpacaway.com and check this one out, because I think you're going to want to put that onto your list.
Yeah. So a lot of the people that went to the conference, like this was one of the experiences. So we talked about Ireland by bike, but this is one of the things that some of the people did. So we got to see firsthand a lot of the pictures and videos and stuff like that. And they're so adorable. You know, they all have names. So especially, I mean, whether you have kids or not, especially if you have kids, but like this is a 1-hour experience. They say it's like 45 minutes of walking and you have 15 minutes to take pictures. So it's not going to take like your whole day, but definitely add that to your list. And so some of the other things besides just visiting Malin Head that you're not going to want to miss is, and I'm not exactly sure how you pronounce it, of course, it's the Malin Head Lighthouse. It's supposed to be one of the most picturesque lighthouses in the entire world.
I can't believe we missed out on that then.
Yeah. And so the thing about this Malin Head area is it kind of is in a peninsula up at the top, which, like I said, it we talked about it. It's going to take us a couple hours to drive there and then a couple hours to drive back. And so that's kind of why you would want to combine these things. It's not like you could just, go and see that. So really wanting to kind of hit all these things. A couple of other things in that same area, the Great Pullet Sea Arch. It kind of reminds me, if you've ever seen the pictures or been to Cabo or seen the pictures of that arch in Cabo, it kind of looks like that. There's a Glenveagh waterfall. And then one of the other things that we had thought, if we were going to drive up to Malin Head, that was suggested to us was go through the Maymore Gap as well, just making that a very, very picturesque drive. And so then the other thing that I felt like was so unique about this area, and we saw this when we did the bike ride and we saw this at Sleeve League, is that you have these dramatic cliffs, but then also all these beaches. And so in that episode with Seamus about Ireland by bike, he mentioned that a lot of the times the people who do some of the bike rides, they may stop at several beaches during the day along the way. Hey there, Sunshine Travelers. If you love finding incredible travel experiences without overpaying, you've got to check out Travel Deal Insiders.
It's our 3-time weekly newsletter where we send you the best cruise, resorts, all-inclusive, tours, and other really cool travel deals we find, with a few cheap flight deals thrown in too. Handpicked and curated, no spam, no fluff.
We dig through the offers every week and send you only the best. Think luxury for less cruises, last-minute getaways, and travel tips to help you book smarter so that you can travel more.
Join now for just $5 a month. That's a savings of $24 a year.
Let's be real. Booking just one deal could save you so much. It makes this $5 membership like a total steal. We're talking 50 times, even 100 times, and more the value right back into your pocket.
Head to sunshinetravelers.com/deals and enter the code podcast to get this exclusive listener deal.
Travel more, spend less, skip the search. We'll see you inside. I remember that we saw a couple of beaches, maybe on the Dingle Peninsula that we saw, but I don't remember there being like a ton of beaches that we stopped at when we did Southern Ireland. So I think this is just super unique. You not only get those dramatic cliffs, but then you can take, a walk along the beach. And we also saw that as we drove that area of Northern Ireland as well.
Something tells me, though, that you're going to want to have a wetsuit for swimming out there in the ocean.
Yeah, I think if you just took a quick dip, though, because it can be. I don't know. I don't know that it would be really rough, but I think it'd be just like a quick dip. Too.
Yeah, I wasn't
like a
thinking
cold
about,
plunge.
Yeah, I wasn't thinking about roughness. I was thinking about how cold it might be.
Yeah. So the famous one in this particular area is called Five Finger Strand.
Well, we would recommend that in this area, you try to find like a local bed and breakfast and just get to know the locals there and make sure you spend time talking to them. Don't rush through breakfast. Spend time talking to your host. If you get in early in the evening, maybe you want to talk to them and ask them questions about the area. But we would definitely say go to a local B&B.
Yeah, you're not going to find a lot of big towns or a lot of hotel chains. And so I think this is, going to be your best bet here. This was one thing that unfortunately, just the nature of our trip this time, we didn't get to do a lot, not like we did in Southern Ireland the last time. Our very last night, we did stay in a local bed and breakfast that just had several rooms. And, it's just so unique when you meet the people that run it. We had a traditional Irish breakfast that you order off the menu, and then the other thing was, in our classic we might not get to eat dinner form, we actually were like, oh my gosh, we're not gonna, by the time that we did our interview with Seamus and we did the bike ride, we weren't gonna get there until like 8:30, and we didn't realize it in time to stop in a town. And then all the little towns that we went through, we tried to stop and they were like, no, there's no restaurants here. So I actually called ahead and was like, what time's your kitchen close? And they were like, well, it's going to be closed. And we ordered something ahead. But they were gracious enough to have it actually hot for us when we got there and stuff like that. So I think that's just the difference that you're going to find when you stay at a local place. And then just going back to some of the stories that we had told before in our Southern Ireland is that the owners had walked us through their home and wanting to show us that. And in one other place, she sat down with us with a map and said, stop and go look at this overlook and a couple of different things like that. So I think that's just the difference that you're going to get. And so for this particular area, 100%, I would recommend that.
Well, one of the places that I talked about just a few minutes ago was the Glenveagh National Park, and we didn't make it to the castle. So the castle is about a 4-kilometer hike into the park. They do also have buses that can take you there, but we wanted to be out and enjoy the beauty and the nature. And it was just so quiet and serene when we were taking that path, walking through what looked like it probably at one time was a forest. And they're really trying their hardest to recapture some of these forests across Ireland that have been cut down and deforested. But, it was along the lake. There were little brooks that would babble, and you could hear those as you walked by. The scenery was just gorgeous because it was in a valley. And so we walked as far as we could with the time that we had. And so we would love to go back and make it to the castle, because once you get to the castle, they have tours of the castle where you can go in and see it. And we just didn't have time to experience that.
Yeah. So I would say probably plan in your itinerary to have pretty much a full day here, especially if you're driving in from somewhere. So if you stay, a little bit closer by, but they do have places that you can eat. They have bikes that you can actually rent to take you. And then they have other hiking trails that you can do as well. So, but they say the castle is really neat. So unfortunately we missed that.
Well, that morning we had gone to the Circle Stone Fort that goes back about 2,000 years old. And it was up on the top of a hill, very windy up there, I remember. And so we went up there and spent some time walking around that, taking pictures. And that was one of the places where we stopped and had a cup of coffee out of one of those little carts, or
they call them coffee pods, like almost little coffee little travel trailers almost. But yeah,
it's a little trailer with the coffee or a cafe built into it, and so you could get a cup of coffee or tea or whatever you wanted. And so because we had done that, by the time we got to Glenveagh, we only had like an hour before we needed to leave and get to the hotel.
Yeah. So, and I'm not going to pronounce this right, but I do at least want you to be able to find it, and we'll link it. But it's something like Crianan of Ailish, but it's definitely worth a stop. I mean, you don't really need more than 15 or 20 minutes there. And it's especially nice if you could time it when there's not a big tour. We kind of had a few minutes, and then some people came, and then had a few minutes after, but it's just a really neat site.
So I think I would just say is make sure that Glenveagh National Park is on your list. And, as typical on some of these things that we're going to talk about, we just didn't have the time to spend there that we really wanted. And we would definitely go back and see these places.
Yeah. And again, I mean, it wasn't far. It was probably half an hour from Letterkenny. So definitely drivable to other places to kind of set yourself up, or you could try to stay nearby.
Are you looking to plan your next unforgettable adventure? At Sunshine Travelers Experiences, we specialize in helping you create tailor-made travel journeys that turn your vacation dreams into reality. Whether you're craving a relaxing beach escape, an awe-inspiring cultural journey, or a thrilling outdoor adventure, we can help. Why choose Sunshine Travelers Experiences? Personalized itineraries designed just for you, expert travel advice and insider tips, seamless booking from start to finish, exclusive access to top destinations and hidden gems. We also book cruises, all-inclusives, groups, tours, and so much more. If you're unsure where to even start planning that bucket list trip, start by asking us. Then let Sunshine Travelers Experiences handle the planning so you can focus on making the memories. Explore now, sunxtravel.com. If you have any questions, email us info@sunshinetravelers.com.
All right. So Scott, this next one is somewhere that I don't know that if I was like looking at a list of things to do or whatever, that I would say, oh, we need to go do this. But I am 100% so glad that we got to visit this place. And so that's why I definitely want to include it and I would say whether you have kids with you on a trip or not, this is just something that is so unique.
So what Melissa's talking about is Wild Ireland. It's a sanctuary on the Inishowen Peninsula, and it really feels like you've kind of stepped back in time. Centuries ago, travelers who went to Ireland referred to it as Wolfland. It is a place where the night air carried the howls of countless wolves, and the mighty Irish wolfhound was even bred to hunt those wolves. But by the late 1700s, farming and hunting had driven the last wild wolf to extinction.
So Wild Ireland is working to bring that story alive again. And so we actually got to meet the owner, who you can just tell, like, he is so passionate about what he does. So they care for European gray wolves, close relatives to the ones that roamed Ireland, along with brown bears and lynx and wild boar. Visitors can watch the wolves move through the forest habitat and hear their haunting calls, a sound Ireland hasn't known for more than 2 centuries.
And what we love is that this isn't just a wildlife park. It's a living conservation project that helps you imagine what the island was like before the forests were cleared and the wolves disappeared. And it's said that at one time, a squirrel could have traveled from Donegal to Kerry and never have touched the ground. There were so many trees in Ireland, and it was actually a typical rainforest climate.
Yeah, because they get so much rain, right? Not a hot one. But yeah, isn't that just incredible? And I think that's like you mentioned the trees in Glenveagh National Park, right? But because they cleared all this and had the farms, it really is hard to imagine Ireland just completely covered in trees. I mean, you do see some forest, but not like what it used to be. So next time, I would love to spend an entire day there. So by the time that we got there, they wanted to tell us a little bit about it. And then they were like, okay, before, it gets dark, we want to take you out and show you some of these things. So they have the education specialist who can tell you all about the animals. And they even talked about how like Yellowstone has reintroduced some wolves into the habitat and how it has changed or brought back the natural order of things, right? And so what they're having the problem with in Ireland now is the overpopulation of the deer because there's nothing to hunt that. So when these animals go extinct, of course, it messes up the balance. So during the conference, Wild Ireland actually hosted us for our opening party for the first night of the conference. And they set it up, I guess I should say, to where like they had it to where the feeding time so that we could actually go out and witness that. So they rescued a couple of bears from a zoo in Eastern Europe several years ago. Actually, they said it wasn't even a zoo. It was like outside of a museum. And he said when they actually first rescued those, it's a sister and a brother, they were actually scared of the grass. They had only ever known the concrete. And so now they have this fabulous habitat. But the coolest thing that I thought is the way that they feed them is they actually make them forage for their food. Now, obviously they have to supply that food, but they hide it in such a way so that the bears actually have to look for it more like they would do in their natural habitat. And so it reinforces that natural behavior, but then it's also so good for their brains. They're not just, sitting there and eating. So it's just an absolutely phenomenal place that, like I said, you could spend a half a day or a full day there.
The wolves reminded us of our own dogs when it comes to feeding time. They kind of circle around and get really excited. And it looked like there was one trainer assigned to each wolf, and they would toss them fresh meat where they would just gobble it up immediately and wait for that next piece. And so, watching these wolves and imagining how they might circle their prey when they're hunting was really neat. And to see them kind of in a natural habitat is absolutely spectacular.
Yeah. And then like Scott said, rescue as many as they can from just bad situations and give them a better quality of life. So it just really, really is a fascinating place. That is about half an hour from Letterkenny, I would say. So you could combine it with the Stone Fort Ring and a couple of other like towns probably to visit during the day.
Yeah. And by the time we got to the wolves, that's when the rain started in. For the evening, and it got dark, and I had not carried my raincoat that night because a couple of nights before it hadn't rained and it was actually warmer at night. And so I had worn like a vest with the long sleeve shirt. And so when that rain came, I got soaked, and so I was out.
I did briefly get to see the lynx that they have there. Just like any other cat, it wasn't super happy about coming out in the rain, but it made a very, very brief appearance before it got too dark.
Well, as you leave Wild Ireland, it kind of strikes you how Donegal just doesn't preserve its wild past. It weaves that spirit into everyday life.
You feel it not only in the forest and the wildlife, but out on the coast too, where the wind and the sea really do shape everything.
And nowhere is that more obvious than the Donegal golf courses. They have 17 links and parkland courses. Many of them hug the Atlantic. And golf here isn't just a sport. It's another way to step right into the elements. Many of these are world-class links that are actually carved by the sea itself. And so one evening in our hotel, we met a group of golfers, and they were dripping from the day. You could tell they had been out in the rain all day long. We were just talking to them, and they laughed about drives that got carried off by wind and putts that all of a sudden shower would come and just soak them. And they talked about how the weather made some of the most challenging and most unforgettable rounds that they've ever played in their lives. And so it really captured the Donegal spirit perfectly. You have to embrace the elements and you'll come away with stories that are absolutely worth retelling.
You know what's interesting, Scott, is now not necessarily in Donegal, but when we were in Portrush in Northern Ireland, they had just had the British Open there. That weekend that we were there, closer to Dublin, they were having the Irish Open. I mean, so golf is just obviously such a huge thing. One of the days when we were driving from the Ring Fort up to the national park, we drove through this town and then by this golf course, and these guys were out there just, getting soaked, playing in the rain. But I mean, this is something that I would love to go back and do and spend more time. Take our clubs or rent our clubs or whatever would be the most convenient. But, just thinking about that time that we got to play in Scotland and just how much fun it was. They did tell us, just make sure you have plenty of balls because you'll lose a lot. And you also have to remember that there's no such thing as bad weather, just inappropriate clothing. But I think I would just don myself in a complete rain outfit and waterproof golf shoes.
And, and that's definitely what they did. They were all wearing rain pants. They all had on raincoats. You just want to make sure you have the right equipment for the weather.
Yeah, but this is just such a great way to experience being outside, having some physical activity, but just in an absolutely beautiful, breathtaking locations.
I do think I would recommend that if you're going to go play golf there, take 2 pairs of shoes.
2 pairs of golf shoes.
2 pairs of golf shoes so that you could swap them out from day to day.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And as we drove along the winding roads, we would see signs in many of the towns for their local pottery studios. For a couple of years, Melissa and I actually took a pottery class, and this has kind of entrenched our love for the art that is created by the artist's hands on a very unforgiving pottery wheel. And while we didn't have time to stop and visit these studios on this trip, we would have loved to have spent more time exploring Donegal's pottery studios, where the artisans shape clay into pieces that are inspired by the sea and the sky. We have pottery that we've bought from a little studio in south of Ireland that we still use today.
Yeah, a lot of the bed and breakfast we stayed at then, they would serve the butter or the marmalade for the Irish breakfast in those little things. And so when we found those in Southern Ireland several years ago, it's just like, oh, this would be such a great reminder. And our granddaughter absolutely loves using these for like her syrup for her pancakes. And so it's just a neat little thing to have that you actually use, I think, from your travels. Okay. And while we're talking about Donegal's artisans, I can't help to think about the cozy pubs where the fiddles and the accordions and the little song flutes that were so cute. And then the traditional Irish frame drum called a bodhrán keeps the ancient tunes alive well past midnight. In most cases, it isn't anything fancy or formal. You might have a couple of musicians that are scheduled to play, and by the end of the evening, there could be a dozen musicians joined in like a jam session. And Seamus even told us, like, that's just the traditional, they call them the traditional sessions, right? And you'll see on the flyers just TRAD, like for traditional sessions. And then like the local people know that play, and then they just show up and just play and play. And it's really something to see if you can catch that in a pub. And so thinking about that as, okay, so you have the artisan of things that you craft, but that music is such an important part of their culture and their traditions as well. And then one of the other places that's worth a stop near Slieve League is the Glencolumkill Folk Village. And I got to visit that one of the days that I did the bike ride, and there they have an artisan gift shop. And so there it was more about like the things made out of wool, right? So the sweaters and the scarves and hats and different things like that. So that would be a great place to pick up some of those. They also had a tea room that had homemade soups and breads. And then of course you can visit the little folk village that's basically a living history museum. The staff there is so knowledgeable and so kind, and honestly so excited to share the history of that with anybody who comes.
So we tasted a hint of this culture, but Donegal's artistry and music really deserve an entire evening or several evenings to truly let that sink in. So make sure that you're allowing time to go to the pubs in the evenings, and that, as Melissa said, you're searching out the ones that have that trad or traditional session because that's where people are just going to bring their instruments and join in on that little jam session. And it's such a beautiful part of their culture.
Yeah, one of the places that we went was called Blake's in Letterkenny. There was a couple of other places that had them throughout the week. So I will link those or put those names there so that you could at least find where they are. But I think in any of the towns, I think if you stop and ask people. And so near like this area, Carrick would be a great place to stay, to visit that Glencolum Kill Folk Village, do the Ireland by bike, go to Sleeve League. So Carrick would be kind of the town that would be near that.
Well, let's recap the packing list that if you're going to take this trip, what do you need to pack with you?
All right. So 100% a good quality raincoat. We mentioned in the other episode that we had to stop and get a better one. You want it to have a nice quality hood and be a little bit warm, right? So have, layers and stuff like that. Of course, depending on when you're going. Like if you're going in the wintertime, you need something really heavy duty. But I would say, throughout the summer in September, but a really good quality raincoat is a must.
And when we talk about a good quality raincoat, this has got to be something that can stand up to being out in the rain all day long, and then it doesn't soak through.
Yes, like the first one that I had.
Yeah, this isn't just like a nylon windbreaker or something like that. It needs to be a good quality raincoat.
Yeah, and I would say get one that's like a little bit longer, or make sure that you bring one on that's a little bit longer to kind of protect more of your body, but then also and is big enough to go over sweaters. So that's why I didn't hesitate to buy a new one, because a couple of the ones that I have are just really lightweight and just fit over a light shirt. And so it didn't really work for this instance anyway. And carry it with you, even if the sun is shining. Like it can be bright shining and you're like, it's not going to rain. It's Ireland. It's probably going to rain. Just carry it with you.
And you may want to carry an umbrella, but I will warn you is that it can get quite windy at times, and that will turn an umbrella inside out. So, you can carry it with you, but I would say the raincoat is probably the most important piece.
Yeah, 100%. Next thing is you definitely want waterproof shoes that are good for walking, hiking. Even if you don't do any strenuous hiking, like even going to some of the places that we did, you want to walk down to the beach. You want to kind of climb up some rocks. You want them to be sturdy, and you definitely want them to be waterproof.
And I would say on that same token, make sure you have good quality wool socks. We found that wool is just great for travel. And if you get a good quality wool sock, they dry very quickly and they don't cause your feet to sweat. Thinking like merino, or what is our new favorite, which is alpaca wool.
Yeah. And so a couple of brands that you've really liked are the Hollow Socks or the Paca brand. That's a couple. I actually picked up a pair of wool socks when we were there. They were a little bit thicker, probably much thicker than I would wear at home. But it's like Scott said, they breathe, they don't smell. If you need to wash them out, they dry quickly. So definitely. And this is something that we've actually been using ever since we did our walk in Italy, even at home. We've just fallen in love with this type of sock and just use it all the time.
And Melissa kind of alluded to it, but you're definitely going to dress in layers. The temps here can vary greatly at times, and it can also be quite windy. And we went in September, and so kind of towards the end of their summer. But like I said, sometimes we were undressing to short sleeves, and then sometimes we were adding layers on because it was so windy.
Yeah, especially if you're going to get out in and out of the car, but then you might go in for a bite to eat and they may have the heat cranked up and you might need to shed some layers. So 100%. I think that we always preach this, but especially true here.
Same thing is, good quality wool layers underneath will help wick the moisture away from your body, help regulate the temperature of your body better. And as Melissa said, we've kind of fallen in love from a clothing perspective with this brand called Paca. And so we've got several of their shirts that we wear as base layers, as well as outer layers. So we each have a couple of sweaters that you can put on top of there. And we find these to work just terrifically.
Yeah. And they're more like medium weight. So they're not like super thick and take up a lot of room. And that's the nice thing about it.
Would definitely recommend a good camera. Now, this doesn't have to be like a professional grade camera. The newer iPhones have great cameras built into them. And you're definitely going to want to have that with you at all times, because you would just run into so many different situations where you want that camera. Like that picture is just going to be right there in front of you, and you're going to want to take advantage of that. One thing that we take with us that we really like, and you might find this helpful, is our Insta360 camera.
Yeah, especially places like this where either, like if you like to fly a drone or you like to have a drone, you either are in places where you can't use it or it's just so windy. So many people lost drones on this trip, or like I said, you can't fly it. And so the Insta360 just allows you to capture some of those things and then not worry about the rain as well, because they are waterproof. I would say that's a big part of it as well. Because a lot of the times it was like, oh, I want to take these pictures and, my camera's getting wet, my phone's getting wet as well.
It's really neat because you can actually extend it and like stuff it down in your backpack and then just let it be there while you're walking to capture what you're seeing. And so you're really not even having to pay attention to that camera. And then finally, I would say that walking sticks might be very useful as you're walking across sometimes uneven ground. And so when we went down to the Giant's Causeway and they had those basilic columns and there was just a lot of uneven territory, I had my stick with me, and so I used it to get around a little bit more. And I would just say that's really helpful to have with you.
And we actually ran into a couple. I think it was when we were in our layover on New York. And so they were asking Scott about his walking stick was actually like a monopod that you could kind of use as a walking stick that folded up. And they were asking him about it. Oh, did you have any trouble with it, in TSA, et cetera? And they inspected it a little more thoroughly. Like, the guy picked it up but it wasn't any problem, because their concern was they're like, oh, we just decided to buy them once we get there. But then you've got to seek out a place. And so a couple of good places for that would be like some of the bigger box stores would be Sports Direct or Mountain. I think it's called Mountain Hardware, if you don't find like a local place. But I don't think you'd have any problem. And then coming back when they came through the security in Dublin, it was no problem at all. Like they didn't even flag them there at all.
The only time that I had any problem with it was at the TSA in Jacksonville.
And it just, he looked at it but it wasn't any problem at all. So I would say get the ones that you want and then carry them with you so that you're not having to let that be the first thing that you're having to seek out. And then maybe you don't find exactly what you're looking for.
Yeah, I definitely would recommend the carbon fiber and collapsible ones that get down really small, and then you could just stuff them down into a bag. Donegal doesn't rush to reveal all of its secrets. From a castle hidden around a lakeside bend to the wind-lashed greens of Ballyliffin, from the howl of a rewilded wolf to the late-night lilt of a fiddle, this county invites you to return, to listen longer, and to wonder even slower. Remember, the world is full of sunshine and surprises. Make 2025 the year that you explore beyond the familiar. That's a wrap on this episode. We hope it gave you some inspiration for your next adventure.
If you enjoyed the show, we'd love for you to leave us a 5-star review on your favorite podcast platform. It helps others find us and keeps the travel conversations going.
Don't forget to follow or subscribe so you never miss a new episode.
And come hang out with us on Instagram or Facebook at Sunshine Travelers Podcast. That's Travelers with 1 L.
Most importantly, share this episode with a friend. You never know, they just might become your next great travel companion.